Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns. Yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are not ye much better than they? Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit to his stature? And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore God so clothed the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is.
All right, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4. And Paul's beginning to close the letter, his final exhortations. And he says, rejoice in the Lord always, or alway. I think I always said it always. Anyways, alway and rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So there's always cause to rejoice in the Lord. Why? Because if we have faith in Him, we know that no matter what our circumstances, that it is ultimately working out to our ultimate good. It may not be, Paul talked about his bonds, and being literally imprisoned. There's all kinds of things that come that are at the time they don't seem good. Maybe someone has a sickness or something, and there's certainly many things which are just demonstrably, like in the world, they're not. You're like, oh, I've got cancer. How's that going to work out good for me? And it's not going to be good in the near term, But through faith in God, we can rejoice in that we are going to be raised and be with Him. That's the ultimate good that He will do to us, is He will save us. And in spite of the negative things that may happen in our lives. And it doesn't hurt to have faith also that it may not, we don't know. The things that seem bad may not, maybe I get cancer and maybe I get better. Maybe I do get better. And maybe I learn from the experience to trust God more. But, I should trust Him whether I wake or sleep, whether I'm alive or whether I'm going to, pay my life. We're all eventually going to die. And we're all eventually going to stand before God in judgment. And so there's no, a lot of the, you look in the book of Exodus, the Israelites, when they wandered in the wilderness, there was a lot of grumbling. There was a lot of murmuring against the Lord, because of along the way, things that didn't seem good that cropped up. That they were He brought us out into this wilderness to slay us. He brought us out in the wilderness to slay our children. Look upon the troublesome circumstances that they found themselves in. When He called them to enter into the land, they said, we can't, for there are giants, in every way. Through their murmuring and complaining and general unbelief, they caused the Lord to be not pleased with them. It was not good. So we ought rather to rejoice and trust in that when Christ was raised from the dead, so also God has our ultimate good in hand. And there are a lot of things in this world, there's a lot of evil in this world that's going to happen. And we may or may not be participants in it, We may be active participants in this evil. It may run right over us, run right over you. The evil of this world can come. The evil things that God has put in the world, the diseases and, and all that. So, in face of that, we are called to rejoice. He says it twice. Rejoice always. I say it again, rejoice. Because whenever you say that, rejoice in the Lord, you'll say, well, just got second thoughts about that. But then he says it again, because while you're having that second thought, he says, no, again, I say rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. What moderation is there? Before I go off on saying moderation, this is what it means. Let's look at the word let's just look at some study helps here, huh? So here we are. Rejoice, moderation. Epicasi. That's not right, Paul. It's going to be something totally different. We'll look at the pronunciation here. I don't know. Epicase, I don't know. Seemingly equitable yielding. Like seemly. Oh, seemly. Like, not seemingly. Seemly, that means like appropriate. Equitable. Yielding. It can be yielding because yielding is like not too hard, not too soft, just right. That's the idea of moderation. I mean, something can be hard as flint; it's unyielding. You know what I mean? But something that's yielding yet not, but not. It's doesn't. There's no implication of softness in that idea of yielding. There say that which is what is reasonable. I like that. Reasonableness, equitableness, fair, mild. There's different definitions you see what he says. Appropriate, by implication, mild, gentle. Because it might be appropriate to be mild. But the thing is, there's a time for every purpose under heaven. There's different times for different things. There's appropriate moments in which it is proper to be mild. There are moments when it is appropriate to be severe. If you are not, if you don't bring the appropriate, if you're not appropriate in the right situation, you will not be seen as, it's not properly moderate in this sense. You know what I mean? It's not just mild. Mild in the sense of someone who would overreact. Flying off the handle in their anger at the least provocation. That's not mild. That's inappropriate. In all things, there's times, but there are times when you should be angry. But sin not, but the appropriate level of anger. It's like it's all right to feel certain things. There's appropriate times to weep. There's appropriate times to rejoice. And rejoice always in the Lord. And notice he follows that immediately with moderation. Man, sorry. I should have muted the mic. I just need to clear my throat. It's not coronavirus, don't worry. I remember, in early March, I missed a bunch of Bible studies. That's because I was ill. And I think that's what it was. Got a text. Okay. Not important. So. All right. Lost my track of thought. I thought that might have been a text from someone telling me, hey, Paul, your Bible study is going off the rails as far as the technical side of it. It's actually a contractor. So, anyways. Well, it says rejoice and then let your moderation be known. Okay, I got to go back here. Let's go. I want just raw text here. Let your moderation be known. Rejoice. Because here's the thing. you can be seen to being rejoicing in the wrong point. You can rejoice inwardly. Rejoice always. Always rejoice. But rejoice appropriately. You know what I mean? There's an appropriate amount of rejoicing. Like at a funeral. You know, you can do a certain amount of rejoicing at a funeral, but in the sense of like, you can have optimistic words. You know what I mean? You can speak words that are not just like, it's over, it's the, you know, I mean, so, you know, there's a lot of ways in which the idea of moderation, you know, it's a huge subject. I mean, it's a part of your behavior. They're like, what do I do in every situation? There's an appropriate response. And what I'm saying to you is you need to think about that. You know, you should look, when you go through situations, let's say you have a conflict. Anytime you have a conflict with another person, I want you to go back and look at yourself in that situation and think, you know, was that really right? Was that really the right response? Was I responding, you know, with Christ-like patience, with Christ-like forbearance, with, you know, Christ-like insight? We don't have his insight. You know what I mean? But maybe the thing is, a lot of times we don't have insight because we don't look inside. And we're not looking for it. We're not looking for the thing that's like, that'll inform us like, oh, you know, they're under a lot of stress, or, you know, a lot of times we get emotional in our responses with other people. We become excitable because we may not understand, you know, because they're doing something that we see as an affront to ourselves or somehow inappropriate to us. It's for our own sakes often that we are, you know, becoming enraged, you know, over whatever situation we might be in. You know, this is something I'm familiar with because it's like I had a, you know, I think more than normal tendency towards, not uncontrolled anger, but let's say just a little inappropriate at times. You know what I mean? Like getting a little bit too hot about things, you know. And it can get that way with frustration, fear. There's all kinds of emotions that can trigger an angry response. Sense of injustice. That one still gets me. So when I feel like things are unjust, man, it is hard for me. My adrenaline starts pumping. You know, I get adrenalized from injustice. Like I start, you know what I mean? I can just feel the fight or flight response triggering in my body. I mean, I can literally feel it in my body. And I get so, I have a physical reaction to it. You know what I mean? And that reaction is hard to handle. Because that reaction is like pumping you full of energetic juice that you really kind of want to just, you know, flare off. You kind of need to. You know, sometimes physical exercise is good for that, but it's not good to just dump it on the person who's causing it necessarily. You know, it's not the most Christian way to deal with it. Let's just say that. So, you know, the way you let your moderation be known, you know, you can't go around being like, hey, let me let you know how moderate I am. I'm such a moderate fellow. I'll tell you. No, it's why. It's because of your interactions with people. Because the way you interact with people, you're going to have a reputation for mildness. Yeah, I think I think I do have a reputation for mildness with people. But that's not absolute. I'm not a mild person. Like at my bank one time, they probably think I'm just the nicest guy. The one day something very unjust happened. I was just, it was too much for me. I didn't do anything too crazy, but I was like animated, and I said, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow to close all my accounts and da-da-da-da-da. And I was speaking, you know, rapidly in a high tone of voice. You know what I mean? And maybe, I don't know if it was inappropriate. You know what I mean? I don't think it was. I mean, no, I didn't. Here, let me put it this way. I did get a call later on from the bank apologizing and telling me that they would, if I come back, they would take care of everything just the way I wanted. And I wasn't trying to use that. And I didn't become rude You know what I mean? Maybe it was an appropriate response. Maybe they look at that and say, like, you know what? If it goes too far to injustice, this person is going to stand up. I don't think that's necessarily a bad reaction. I don't know. I'm just using it as an example. And you would have had to been there to be able to help me judge it. Because it's not always easy to judge exactly how did that go? Did I mess that up? They're still very polite to me, maybe more polite, but they may value, hey, he's pretty moderate, obviously there's a line, I don't think it's a call for us to become doormats, to be yielding, but not just pushover. I think, maybe someone could set me right on that. I don't know. I didn't start yelling. But like I said, I had a high tone of voice, where it would be like, if I was explaining something, like if I was explaining something right here like this, and I'm talking about this tone, this is the way I was talking. Instead of normally I'm like, hello, da-da-da-da-da, it's like, so I was very earnest. So I think, was anyone there? My wife wasn't there. I told her about it. But I came home very adrenalized. I was very worked up. But the call made me feel better, because it was ridiculous, right? But see, things are going to happen in life that are ridiculous, unjust, and how you handle them is going to reflect on you. Everyone's going to see it. They're going to say, boy, what a jerk, Or maybe not. Maybe they're not going to say what a jerk. But they're going to say, well, he sticks up for himself. I don't know. I don't think Christianity is about sticking up for yourself. It's about sticking up for what's right. That's right. Jesus came in, my house should be a house of prayer, and you have made it a den of thieves. You can stand up for what's right. The Lord did. We should stand up for what's right. But the thing is, when you got to be careful that it's not just because of your own self-interest. Sometimes we stand up for what's right because, well, it's right, but it's important to me. But then there's rights and wrongs in other places in our lives or in people we're acquainted with, and we're not so concerned about it. Oh, be patient. You need to be patient, son. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I wouldn't be, but you should. It's not good. So by the way we carry ourselves in the world reflects on us. And we got to remember the Lord is at hand. It means the Lord's near. So that's what that idiom means. He's at hand. It means he's, the Lord is at hand just as my nail clippers are at hand. They're at hand. They're right here. They're within reach. They're close. I'm going to mute this for 1 second just so I can clear my sinus. Okay, much better. I can breathe. So, it's not breathe, it's talk, actually. Let's go back to the text. God is close. He's closer than we realize. He's at hand because he's in us. He's close, very close. He's not far away. He's not up in heaven, far away. I mean, he's in heaven, but through the Holy Spirit, he is present with us right now. And also, in a sense, he is close in that he is always, like, his coming is not that far off. Each of us, when we die, the next moment will be the judgment. So the judgment, and also, we will see the end of the world at the same. That's how I believe it. It's like you die, and it's the judgment and the end of the world, and the millennium, because I'm a premillennialist. I'm not an adamant. I've done studies on the millennium, and I'm not adamantly so, or think that if you think otherwise, you're a heretic. I just think there's problems with that, but it's not. And I owe someone a study on that. On some of the other views, like post-millennialism specifically, which I didn't really address in my millennial study. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Okay. Be careful for nothing. I don't think I'm going to have any strange... Do I have a reason to look at that word? I'm going to... Yeah, I was going to say, to be anxious or care for. It's pretty much careful. It implies be careful in the sense of anxiousness. in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known. We could easily rejoice in the Lord. Be moderate. Don't be anxious. Because that's another way you can show a lack of moderation. Like, oh, I'm so worried about the future. I'm so worried about the future. I'm so worried about what's coming. I'm so fearful. It doesn't reflect well. God is near. I remember I have a version of a song. It's never been released. My wife did a version of it too. I think that is recorded. I don't think I ever recorded it, but it's like, when I sing, the Lord is at hand, I say the Lord is near because I like it like that. And I say, instead of be careful for nothing, because that's not very good song material, I say, the Lord is near, there's nothing to fear. Because that's the tone in which you should take it. The Lord is at hand. Don't be afraid. He is near. Don't be anxious. Don't be fearful. Rejoice. God is at hand. When people say God is in control, they don't usually believe it. They believe free will is in control, but hey, they sort of believe he's in control. Or at least he's close enough that he might be able to do something about it if we pray, right? Well, it's not if we pray that he can do something about it, but praying about it is the best thing you can do about it. The best thing you can do is pray very often. Is turn to God in prayer. And why? Is it to make God do something different? Like he wasn't gonna do anything about the situation until you prayed? You know what I mean? Well, it's good to pray. It's part of what God. Why is it good though? Before I go on to what I was about to say, I'm going to go to what I was going to say before, which is, prayer is your. You are turning to God. It's like you have to have a relationship with God. If you want, people say, one of his disciples, I've said this recently a lot because it's something I discovered when I was teaching Luke recently. And I'm sure others have discovered it. It was new to me at the time. When Jesus says, pray that you move this mountain. If you had enough faith as a mustard seed, you could move this mountain. And my point is that the mountain really represents God. Because people think you need a lot of faith to work miracles. Like, if you have enough faith, you can get the blind to see because Jesus often associates his healings with faith. Great is your faith, be it even as you say, right? But his exclamations about the greatness of their faith, there was also a time he says, they say, believest thou? And he says, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. That's not very great faith, and it happened anyways. Great faith, God rejoices in great faith, right? But it's not like it requires a lot of faith to move God. And that's what Jesus was saying about the mustard seed. You don't need a lot of faith to get God to move. You just need some, And whether or not God moves, that's God's. My prayer to him is I'm engaging in a verbal exchange, or at least a verbal volley, and another person. Well, what kind of relationship do I have with God? Have I paid him much attention? Have I sought him? In the morning I will seek thee. Upon my bed I will turn to you. I look to you day and night. Is that me? Or am I just, occasionally, if all else fails, I might turn a prayer towards God, because it's like at a desperate moment, desperate circumstances require desperate measures. And so I will do something so silly as to talk to nothing. And that's the attitude is that, well, maybe he's there. I'll try. I'll pray. I mean, that's a very little faith indeed. I have enough faith to just sort of try it. All else has failed. Might as well do the last thing I ever thought of. Talk to an invisible man in the sky. But God is at hand. He's not far off. He's able to answer us. He is present with us. So I pray to a present God, Lord. I don't have to be loud. I don't even have to speak necessarily, because the Spirit in me makes intercession to God on my behalf. But when I pray, even if I have a silent prayer, or even a prayer that's not full of words, I can just silently and thoughtlessly turn my heart towards God. You know what I mean? But, speaking actual words is good. Is not. I'm not saying it's not good, of course. I'm just saying there's all kinds of ways you can pray to God. Prayer and supplication. I don't know if there's anything interesting. He says both prayer and supplication. Okay. I'll bring these words up just because it's, why just tell you when you can view it yourself. For yourself. All right. Sorry about the weirdness. Yeah, I wish this would just permanently lock this window here. So it would be like, I don't know why I have to, if I minimize it, it stays there. I'm not going to explain to you right now, but it flashes when I bring it back up. If I don't minimize it and I go and I just click on the thing, it does this. Yeah. And there's a lot of things I want to click on that do that. So that's really, I don't know if that's whatever. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong. Okay. That's a possibility. That's a strong possibility. Okay. So we did, that's our moderation word. Prosuke. That's prayer. That's the usual word for prayer. And let's say anything special about it. From prosukomai, I'm not going to try to break the word back to the basic meaning of the word. We kind of know what it means to pray. From pros, towards, and a wish, prayer. Yeah. To wish upon a God. Deesis, actually. To be in want, lack. Praying for a specific or felt need. And Strong says, from diomai, a petition, prayer, request, supplication. So, has to do with requests, wants and needs. Sometimes we pray to God out of our wants, meaning out of desire. I've made prayers of desire. Lord, I want to find a wife. That was one of my early prayers. And then another one is out of necessity. Lord, if you don't do this, I'm going to die, or Lord, my friend is dying or whatever. It's like there's different kinds of needs and wants. It depends on how you, sometimes the word want, like in the old sense, like say, you shall want of nothing means need, as we use it today. But usually we would put a line in modern English between want and need, right? Say, you want it, you don't need it. Need and want are different. But you'll notice some archaic usage of want in older writings, and it's saying, people were left wanting. But it means the poor and needy go wanting. It's not like they're looking for iPhones. It means they didn't have enough food or shelter or clothing. They were wanting clothes and wanting food. It's not like they had clothes and stuff and they wanted more. It's that they needed it. But I'm going to use it in this sense, the way we use it. That prayers, in this sense, are needs or wants. And supplications are needs. But not strictly so. You know what I'm saying? Not strictly so. I'm just saying, it's a handy way to sort of think about it. But maybe like that. To lack, specific felt need, heartfelt petition. Okay, I don't know, a sense of, it definitely comes from the idea of something being missing, which it could be something you want also. You know what I mean? But there's really a difference between them? Maybe not much more. I suppose the Greeks could also argue about what each specifically meant, what the difference was. It's not, wants are not necessarily bad prayers. It's not necessarily bad to pray about something you want, a desire. It's not bad to pray about, certainly something you need. You could, well, Paul, I wouldn't think I was praying something bad because I needed it. Oh, you might. Maybe say like, maybe I should just trust God instead of praying to get this need. I do not, like I've said in the past, when I pray, I don't pray. I stopped praying about my car situation like years ago. You know what I mean? I generally don't. I don't know when exactly. Recently, not recently, of course, because I have a good car situation now. I remember times driving and praying, like, Lord, I hope the car makes it. And stuff like that. That's all right. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I try to, let these kind of things known to God with the right attitude. Like Paul says, with thanksgiving, like be thankful. Not necessarily thanks for answering my prayer before you answered it. That's all right. But more so, I ask this, but thank you for all you've done for me. And I've told people before, my prayer, I take the form of, Lord, I like to take this position. It's like, Lord, you always have done good for me, and everything you do is good for me. And you've always looked after my needs, I would rather pray like this, and I'm much troubled about this thing, this situation, right? Whatever it may be. Give me peace. Show me how I should handle it. Show me how I should, that's much more needful than the situation to be changed. Whatever the situation is, besides, the situation is going to be what it's going to be. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. However I'm going to react to it, I'm going to react to it. As far as but I want, the part that I want to talk to God about is the part that is eternal. The car is not eternal. That car's going to rust away. Moth and rust doth corrupt, and it's not going to be around forever. But what I learned from going through all the difficult situations in life, all the things I learned, all the lessons I gained, are permanent. They are eternal, or everlasting, let's say. They will last forever. So, the fact that my car, whether it's working or not, is not a very useful thing to pray for. But to obtain that I should have peace no matter what the outcome is an everlasting prayer answer. That's a very efficient use of prayer. Now I've got something that's forever. I had peace in the midst of that situation. I can take that with me. I'm not going to take the car with me, but I can take the peace I had when the car fell apart and I had to walk 20 miles or whatever to get gas, or whatever. And I missed the appointment, I missed this, I missed that, whatever it was. I missed the accident that was, I usually say, I try to remind myself when something, if some frustrating things start happening and it's preventing me from leaving, I gotta go. But things getting in my way. There've been enough times where I've then driven and seen there's an accident. Maybe I would have been in that accident. Maybe this is all, I think that at least, I don't know that that's ever really happened, but it certainly put that in my mind. And that's reason enough to know that whatever's going on, the purpose is to bring me closer to God. Sometimes bad things happen to us to drive us nearer God. Because if you only pray when bad things happen, guess what? And the Lord loves you, more bad things may be coming your way. This makes me think, maybe I should, every time something good happens, I should pray to make more good things happen. I don't know. Whatever's going to happen is what's going to happen. The Lord has a plan for you. He has a plan for us. And we trust that it is good. That all things are working together for good for us. Let your requests be made known unto God. Make them as good as you can. Don't fret about maybe you don't pray right. You know what I mean? The most important thing is that you do communicate with God. Open up those channels. Invite the Holy Spirit to inform your understanding. Just ask especially those things. So that the closer you are with God, the more you understand the situation, the less you get worried and freaked out about stuff. You know what I mean? You become more solidly based in your Christian walk. It's very important. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding. I mean, because there's something you don't understand. Sometimes you don't even understand what's going on. You don't understand. I don't understand. I don't know what's happening. I'm anxious. I can't figure it out. I can't figure it out. The peace of God passes understanding. It surpasses it. Now, I don't know if he means that you can't understand the peace of God, which fits into what I was saying, or if he's saying, which passes. I want to see what another translation says about that, because that is a little odd formulation, isn't it? The peace of God which passeth all understanding. I do like the idea, the thought that it means you don't have to understand the situation you're in. Like it's like in either it surpasses understanding, it's better, or it overtakes it. Or it's beyond our understanding. Like we can't understand how we should have peace, but if we have it, I mean, it's kind of it's the same way to get. It's two different ways to look at the same idea. Like if you say I can't understand God's peace, that means when I have it, I didn't get there through my own understanding. I got there through God giving it to me. I have peace without understanding, because I can't understand it. Or you could say it's something, it passes, it's better than it. Because went too far. Which transcends all understanding. Well, transcends. Maybe that's a good one. And really, if I really want to, if I really want to get something, I'd go for something like, what do they got here? They got the New Living Translation. There we go. I think that's what that is. Yeah. Okay. Fix your thoughts. Yeah, it begins almost impossible to even realize you're in the same place. I went to it. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you'll experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. Yeah. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. The New Living Translation. Oh, wrong thing. Don't cross the streams. I hate that page is even there. I wish I could stream without it being open. All right, so back to here. It passes all understanding. It's superior to it in whatever way or sense you'd like to think about it. It keeps your hearts and minds. Your heart and mind needs to be kept. This is how you'll be able to rejoice when you have the peace of God, which passes all understanding. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Yeah, that's a verse. I almost feel like singing it, but I won't. These are the things to think about. We could think about our fears. Whatsoever things are false, whatsoever things are dishonest, whatsoever things are unjust, whatsoever things are impure, whatsoever things are ugly, whatsoever things are ill news, if there's any corruption, if there's any complaining, that's what we think about. It's true. That's what people think about. They think about all the lies, all the dishonesty, all the injustice, all the impurity, all the ugliness, all the evil things people are saying, all the unrighteousness, that's what people focus on. All the sinners, what they're doing, all they're corrupting our society, all the negativity. What are we doing to improve it? We need to pass some laws. Really? Is that how it works? Jesus started by, we got to change the government. It's not going to work, I mean, seriously, just like talking about modern politics. Like the current president, right, represents, it's like a surrender of the fight that Christians were having in the 90s. The fight for, when they were really trying to influence government and stuff. The reason they were able to support is because they gave up that fight. I don't know that it was a fight worth having, because it was a fight focused on the impurity, trying to legislate the world into a more righteous place, and it won't work. They wanted to. I remember the last gasp of that movement was the Defense of Marriage Act. And the current president is the first president ever elected to office who is for, let's call it, rainbow marriage. And he wasn't opposed to it. I know he's enthusiastic. He's got no problems with that, right? And I got no particular problems with him, But, and because, we tried so hard, and I say we, but was I particularly involved? No, but I mean, Christians tried so hard to control society. And the backlash was, it totally, and now it's like, forget it. There's no way you're going to get any sort of Defense of Marriage Act pact. And you let the cat's out of the bag. Not now. And really, it shouldn't be ever. The way you get society to be more moral, to be more righteous, is to believe in righteousness yourself and to live it yourself and to be an example yourself. Let your moderation be known to all men. You got to stand up, and you should be meditating on the truth, on honesty, and being honest and truthful, being just in your own. If we do these things, Paul says there are all these similar lists. The Apostle Paul is heavy on righteousness. People say there's some sort of, like Jesus talked about doing right, but Paul talked about just believe and everything's fine. Not as far as I could tell. You understand that Paul even cared about what you were thinking. In the Old Testament, it was just about what you were doing. Jesus introduced this. Hey, it's what's inside. And Paul is just affirming and expanding on everything that Jesus taught. I never found any, like when people would say, oh, there's disagreement here. It's like, no, you just don't understand. It's because you have to like really be into the Bible to understand it. And to like, I feel like I know Paul a bit. You know what I mean? After so many years of reading his letters over and over and over again, you kind of get a better sense of who he is. A lot of what people say from Bible is like, they basically studied it with someone who was hostile. Who had a hostile attitude. And so they teach them all these hostile attitudes. And then you try to explain to people, like, oh, that's your interpretation. Of course. Yeah, it's my interpretation, but it's like, who gave you yours? Does yours arise out of decades of being in it? And seeking the truth. Anyways, when we seek the truth, we need to seek the truth. Look after the thing. Look after speak things that are just. Think about justice. Not meditating on all the injustice. Not meditating on all the falsehood that's going around. Whatsoever things are of good report. Is that one word in Greek? I don't know. I'm just curious. What's good report? I think it probably has something to do with reputation or something. Oh boy, I gotta get back to the King James. Good report. Euphemos. That's funny. Euphemos. Does that sound like a word you know? Euphemos? Sound a little bit like euphemism? It does, because it's the word from which we derive the idea of euphemism. Well reported of, spoken of kindly. Euphemism, we use it like, it means like when you use a softer word for something kind of profane. Like, say like, well, boy. Because I think euphemism, like when we say someone's dead, we say, well, he's asleep. Okay, there you go. There's a good one. All the other ones that were coming in my mind were like for body parts and stuff. I'm like, I don't want to say this. I don't want to say this. A lot of times, use them with kids to describe parts of their body. I never did that. When I taught my kids about their body, I didn't use any little cute words, like wee-wee or something like that. I used a euphemism. Or all that stuff is like, I just use the medical terms. You know what I mean? It did result in it's kind of funny results with your sister, your 6-year-old declaring to people like, I hurt my, and then he uses medical term for sensitive parts of his body. And they're kind of outraged. I'm like, what is he supposed to say? What it is like, you're supposed to not, you say, usually you'd say like, I hurt my groin. Even though that's a different part of the body. It's just in the general vicinity. All right, whatever. Euphemism, euphemos. Means, but the funny thing is, in spite of all that, it means what? Well reported of, spoken in a kindly spirit, laudable, reputable. Reputable, I like that. The idea is to use nice words for bad things, or for things that are generally not. If you use nice words, here's what I don't like about euphemisms. It's the idea that if I use nice words, I can talk about nasty things. I just talked about things that it's like uncomfortable. I mean, I'm not really uncomfortable talking about them, but I just think like, is it really appropriate? No, it's not appropriate. It's not an appropriate time to talk about those things. And so euphemism, it gives you the illusion that you're talking about something like this, you're saying, like if I say use nicer words, it makes the thing nicer. Sometimes it does, but to me that's just a sort of that's so arbitrary and weird. It's like, it doesn't really. Like no matter how you slice it, certain subjects, no matter how you use the euphemisms, if you talk about like, if you're using euphemisms for death, you're still talking about someone dead, and there may be an inappropriate time to do that. You know what I mean? To like where it's like, hey, maybe this isn't the best time. It's like, even though you're using a euphemism, John just lost his mother. His mother just died like 2 days ago, and you're telling me this story, and even though you're trying to couch it in all this language, it's like, it's still the same thing. All right, but anyways, but he's not talking euphemism. All right, that's where I'm off the rails here. This word does not mean euphemism. It means just to speak well, reputable, things worth praising, right? Not just praiseworthy words, but things for which praiseworthy words naturally spring up. Not things where you're using them as a blanket to cover something nasty. No, it means things that are genuinely well spoken of. Like, I guess what comes to mind, people always say, hey, it's good to do this, it's good to do that. Eat well, exercise, Do this. Walking's good. It's good to pray. The things that you've heard are good. Think about that. Think about when you hear, I heard a good thing the other day. Think about it. I heard something bad. Oh, let me tell you about the bad thing I heard. It's like I'll whisper it in your ear. That's how people are. Did you hear it? Did you hear about Susan? Let me tell you. Oh, you're not going to believe this. Right? That's not good. If there be any virtue. People don't want to talk about virtue. Virtue is boring. Let's talk about vice. If there be any vice. We were out last night, and boy, we got smashed. And then we went and we did all these drugs. Oh, isn't that exciting? Or here's another way. There's people doing drugs, man. There's so much drug doing and drugs and drugs and drugs. We do have a drug problem. I'm just saying that there's two ways to deal with those problems. There's one, you can just focus on the problem. But the solution doesn't require you necessarily to focus. If you're focused on the good things, it leaves no room for the bad things. It's like when Jesus talked about the unclean spirit going out of a man, and he comes back and he finds his house clean and swept and empty. The idea is that, and he brings with him 7 more devils more awful than himself, or whatever, I forgot what the adjective was. And the man's worse off than he was at the beginning. It's not enough to just empty yourself of evil. You got to fill yourself with something else. You can say to someone like, oh, quit partying and doing drugs and carousing and being promiscuous, and you should stop all that. And then they're like, well, what do I do? Because that's all they do. It's not enough to just say, don't do things. There's things that you should do. You can have a rich family life. In fact, I had a discussion with someone about the rainbow life. If you know what I'm using a euphemism there, by the way. Sometimes it's useful. It's useful for avoiding the algorithms. I wonder if algorithm is a word in the algorithm they look for to signal that that you're trying to avoid it. Because I don't want this to be flagged as like, oh, he talks about this stuff and we better watch him. I just don't. I've done it enough, but it's like, because nobody's going to listen to these videos, but they'll send their machines to do it. So anyways, someone was talking to me about that rainbow situations, right? People into the rainbow life. Rainbow life. And it's, and when I was trying to tell him what's wrong with it, I took the tack, instead of saying you'll never experience, you never experience the richness and the fullness of the life you could have with a family life that's lived in a natural way. The fullness of the human experience, you're being denied. The richness of your children and of what it, if you're a man, what it means to be a man. A woman, what it means to be a woman, ultimately, to live the full life of a man or a woman. Not necessarily, children aren't necessarily necessary to that, but there's a full life to live as a man, and it doesn't include those things. You will miss out on them by filling your life with those other things. You can fill your life with good, with service, with righteous doing, with service to others is the primary one. The what it does for you is more than what people realize. The good you carry away from that and that you do for yourself far exceeds all that the hedonistic pleasures give you. You will never feel so fulfilled through pleasure seeking. Pleasure seeking will never fulfill you the way service will. And with the sense of true, feeling good about yourself and about the life you lead and just about in general, good feelings, good vibrations all around, I guess, whatever. But by dwelling on the good and by living out the good we raise people around us. We do, and we will. More so than on just ragging on the bad things and thinking about the bad things, meditating and preaching about the bad things. It's not to say that Paul talks about the bad things. The prophets talk, wickedness burneth as a fire, shall consume the briars and thorns. We could talk about it, but do not, like sometimes, because I remember, I remember people talking about, like, when I was young. Let me start this way. When I was young, I was really focused on the bad things, Satan, Antichrist, the tribulation. I was really focused on the bad things that were coming, and there are bad things coming, and I was focused on. I wanted to know. Do you know what the angels did? If there's any impurity you can think of, think on it. What the angels did. Do you know what the angels that sinned? Do you know about that? I mean, many of you may or may not. I'm not. But again, it's what it was is not good. The angels that sinned. As Peter, God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them unto chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment. But people are like, well, what did they do? Well, I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. And so, they'll go into Genesis and, they were doing sex stuff, whatever. And become, I was focused on that kind of stuff, like the evils that were being done, And I remember listening to other, like, mainstream, they're saying you should major in God, but minor in Satan. But I remember thinking, like, I think I've kind of majored in Satan. I mean, I wasn't following Satan. I was all for God, but my studying, my thoughts was all about Satan. What's Satan doing? Where's Satan going? What's Satan going to do? What's Satan's plan? What's God's plan? Sure. I know what God's plan is. I got my faith in him. That's settled. The cross of Christ, that's beautiful and all that. Fine. But what about Satan? What about what the bad people are doing? What about the Kenites? What are the evil men up to? What are the wicked men up to? What are the wicked doing? I want to watch and focus on them. It's not that you shouldn't keep an eye on that, but you better major. Paul's not being absolute here, because he talks about wicked men. He already did. Beware of evil men, or beware of whatever. Beware of the concision. Beware of evil workers. Beware of evil workers. Be aware. Watch them. Keep an eye on them. Mark them. Fine. But your focus needs to be on the Lord, and your focus needs to be on the good things, and especially that you would be doing them. Taking captive every thought to the obedience of Christ. The evil that might be creeping into you while you're not paying attention to the most important things is really important. If we wanted to change society, you got to start with you. I mean, it's the analogy of the beam in your eye. Jordan Peterson did his book, 12 Rules for Life, and one of them was clean up your room, which is just a basic retelling of remove the beam out of your own eye before you start trying to poke in someone else's eye. Get your own house in order. Or just like the Christian concept of, like, that a man ought to rule his house well before he starts be given authority in the house of God. He ought to have, in some way, if not literally, it doesn't have to be. Paul never had a family, right? So it doesn't mean you have to have a family. But if you see a guy and he hasn't ruled his house well, his family's in disarray, right? His children are disobedient. His children are, disrespectful to him. If the guy can't make the people in his own house respect him, why should you respect him? And someone who's untried, like very young, also, you gotta be careful. Because until they gotta show some sort of, before they're put in authority. If there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Praiseworthy things, virtuous things. I don't think I need to dwell on each individual one. Virtue. What is the word virtue here, anyways? We're almost done. I guess we are done, huh? If there be any virtue, I'm waiting for that time when I get to that word virtue that means what I. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were with me. There we go. Arete. Oh, yes. Properly virtue, moral excellence, which is displayed. Moral goodness. Where's the Strong's definition? Yeah, properly means manliness, by the way. Because it comes from the word aren, which means like a man. From the root that means man, like valor, excellence, intrinsic or attributed. It means virtue. It means being virtue, but it comes from this idea of like the right way to be a man. You know what I mean? To stand up. And I think we know what virtue means. Notice when we've used it in English sometimes when we say like Jesus talked about, I felt the virtue go out of me when a woman touched him to heal. And it meant power there. Right? Strength. I felt the strength go out of me. I felt the power to heal go out. Because virtue implies a strength of goodness. Right? Goodness and strength. That's why it comes from a word that kind of is like, it has the idea of manliness somewhere in the background. You know what I mean? Of its where it's derived. It comes from that idea of manliness, of excellence, of strength. That's what virtue is. Not of it. Don't think of a caricature of like, you know, of toxic masculinity or whatever they call, you know, what they say these days, or of machismo, which is a word I'd be more inclined to use. You know, it doesn't mean like all macho. You know, people will say. I remember a guy asked me what I thought manliness was, and I think he totally thought I was going to say some macho nonsense. Probably because he's used to talking to kids. He hadn't talked to anyone of my age. I'm like, this is what it means to be a man to me. You know, it's like I serve my family, I serve my children, I raise them up, you know, to be strong and to be, you know, all these things. I serve my wife. I am Lord of all and servant of all. You know, they obey me, and I bend my back to carry them and to labor to support them, and to bring them up, to make them all stronger. You know what I mean, to lift them all. That's what I do. That's what it means to be man. Not just to like, you know, sometimes people think like. I remember like the movie The Lion King. Remember the evil lion Scar. I forgot what exact words he said. He was like, "I'm the king. I can do whatever I want." Some people think that's what it means, right? And that movie was good in that it was like, that's the point. It's like, no, it's about being the head person means you're in charge and responsible, and everything's on you. Everyone's looking at you. You are the least free of all people. In many ways, you know. When you make those, when you know, I get to decide, yeah, and I get to take responsibility for my decisions. I have the burden of having decisions. That's why I defer many decisions to I say, you will decide that. You know. Let me see. I'm looking here. I know I'm done. Well, I thought the last verse we should throw in, those things which you have both learned and received and heard and seen in me do. And I got a piece. He's saying, use me for an example. He said, mark those that walk so as an example. I'm an example, he says. Things you've learned, received, and heard and seen. Oh, learned, received, heard, and seen. Notice, like I was saying before, you got to take in, you got to be, like, if you want to do right, you got to be observant. You got to look at what's going on around you. You got to think about what's going on. What's the right thing? What's the good thing? What's the virtuous thing? What's the praiseworthy thing? What thing is going to be spoken well of? You know, that's what we're looking for. And he's saying, those things which you have seen, you got to learn, meaning someone's going to teach you. You got to receive of someone, which means it's like, Lord, give it to me. And I got it. I received it. I received it. I received a lot of my understanding. When I got the Holy Spirit, it had a revolution of my understanding where it changed my understanding. And it was like all of a sudden, I'd been studying the Bible for over 10 years at that point. And all of a sudden, it was like, in my mind, it was shifted around. And I had a new understanding. But it's the same knowledge, new understanding. I'd received it. I didn't really learn it. I'd learned a lot of stuff wrong, but all of a sudden, in a moment, I'd received a new understanding. So there's things we can receive. It's not like learning. You say, well, it's learning. It's like, well, maybe. But it's like, as I say, ideas sometimes, if they strike out of the blue. You ever had an idea that just popped into your head? That's a received thing. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a conclusion from learning, but it's the receipt. It's being received at the end there. And heard and seen. You can observe. You can listen. He's saying, look at me for an example. Those things I've been trying to show you. We can look to each other as examples. I can give you some examples. I'm not the example Paul was, I have, but to the extent that some things I tell you, you can use also as examples. Of course. It's good to have people that can lead us and teach us and help us. That's why God gives teachers and stuff for our instruction, to help us. And God will be with you. God is with me, and I tell you, if you listen to the things I'm saying, He will be with you. And you will have peace. Maybe not instantaneously, but you will, by practicing putting these things into practice, following after them, paying attention to them, you will have peace. We'll pick up at verse 10 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me in this study. And I look forward to being back again tomorrow.